what you are basically. Deep, deep down, far, far in, is simply the fabric and structure of existence itself.
Peace for all men and women, for all men and women, for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, peace in all time.
Honestly expressing yourself.
Peace for all men and women, for all men and women, for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, peace in all time.
The fabric and structure of existence itself.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the Parallel Mike podcast. I'm your host Mike. On tonight's show we have a new guest. His name is also Mike. It's Mike Farris from the Coffee and a Mike podcast. I was recently invited as a guest onto Mike's show. It was actually one of the only, if not the only interview that I accepted this year because, well, quite frankly, I was pretty burnt out from doing interviews. They're quite stressful. You have to really prepare in advance, have all of your talking points ready. And if it's a live interview, it's even more stressful. Then afterwards, you sometimes look back on it and say, did I just say a load of garbage? And sometimes, sadly, it's true. You do say a lot of garbage. But I did have a mutual friend in common with Mike. And so I accepted his invite. And I'm really glad that I did because I had a fantastic conversation with him. And I realized we had quite a lot in common. Mike does speak to a very broad range of guests as well. So he has lots of interesting conversations, and I thought that would make for a good conversation on my podcast. So here it is. It's Mike Squared, as one of our listeners put it in the comment section to the conversation I had on Mike's podcast, which I thought was quite a nice, witty comment. So in part one, we really get into talking about the problems of our age and how Mike sees it, and we have a very interesting back and forth dialogue around the collapse of Western civilization. So that one's nice and fun. And then in part number two, we actually start to talk about some of our passions, what we do to relax. And it turns out both me and Mike share a passion for trail running and other sports like boxing. So we discuss some of those things, but I think it's a really nice, relaxed conversation in part number two. It's kind of like a yin-yang episode. Part number one, we get into the more serious stuff. And in part number two, we actually talk about real stuff to do with our personal lives and what we do to take a step back from all of the stuff we discuss in part number one. So members, I think you'll enjoy this one. Of course, if you're not a member yet, I am somebody who has no sponsors. I do everything independently over here. It's more of a passion project, really, doing the podcast. Of course, you know me from my financial work, but this is something else that I do to have more in-depth conversations, and I couldn't do it without listener support. So you'll have to forgive me for asking for support for part number two, but it is how I keep the lights on, and it's what enables me to do this show. And of course, I've got a huge amount of gratitude for anyone and everyone who does support the content, whether that's by becoming a member, or you can also support me by giving this a like and a comment on your favorite podcast app. That's not something that many people remember to do, but if you do, it's a massive help for me in the show. So I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to do that. In closing, my friends, have a fantastic rest of the week. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy this conversation with Mike Farris of the Coffee and a Mike podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Parallel Mike podcast. We are joined today by a new guest. His name is Mike Farris, and he is the host of the Coffee and the Mike podcast, which I was graciously invited onto just about a week ago, wasn't it, Mike, while we had that conversation. Hopefully your audience enjoyed it. It was one of the only interviews that I did this year, so it was certainly a fun one for me. But before we get started, Mike, we've got a lot we can talk about, but I just want to give you a little bit of space to tell my audience, what is it that you do? Who are you? Where do you come from? So I'll hand it over to you, Mike.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It was great getting the opportunity to speak with you last week. And, things I didn't even know about you, we ended up chatting for whatever it was, an hour and 40 minutes. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be on. My name is Michael Farris. I am the host, creator of Coffee and a Mic, which I started almost 7 years ago. And I think we talked about a little bit, you were on my show. When I started this, it was never my intention to be talking about topics that I discussed today. And originally it was going to be running because I have a love for running. I live in Arizona. So my thought was go up to Flagstaff, do them in person because Flagstaff is a mecca for Olympic hopefuls training up there. And then I would go to LA. I thought go to LA if you meet, try to meet people through Instagram. Instagram was my main like kind of prospecting tool at that time, where I would connect with people in the Hollywood space and try to set up times to speak with people there. And LA is always a fun place to go hang out anyway. And then I also have a love for boxing. So, we discussed, I mean, Freddie Roach was kind of a childhood hero of mine. He was friends with my family. So I've known him since I was a little kid. And so I'd go to LA, hang out at a wild card boxing gym and, watch whoever was coming through there to train. And yeah, the first podcast he ever did was on my show. So it was kind of crazy. Called Mickey Rourke a pussy on my show. Sorry for the language, but that's a quote. But yeah, but then as COVID evolved, or as COVID came through, I had to start doing these remotely, and I just couldn't be quiet about what I thought was going on. And so my show just, it evolved and it changed more to, at that time, medical freedom and started to get more political. 2020 was a real, you couldn't escape the politics that were going on. And now, I have people on that I think that to be critical thinkers and be objective of where and what they can best do as individuals to prepare. And that's where I'm focusing on right now. So a little bit about my show. Me personally, I actually will be 47 next Friday. And I'm somebody who has struggled with weight and eating. At one point, the height of everything, I was almost 280 and I'm only 5'5". Today I sit around 152, 153. So I take working out and what I eat now very, very seriously. And I think it's important. I don't think we can rely on the healthcare systems any longer to ensure our health. And so that's a little about me personally. I guess if I was going to add anything else to it, I have a love for 80s and 90s movies. And I also, I love to run. I do practice some yoga. And I think that's a kind of a top line summary of me personally. It's kind of all over the place there, but
No, I think it's nice to give listeners an overview when they don't actually know you. I was the same on your show. It's like, what do I say about myself? There's kind of like about 10 different things you could say and you don't know which ones are useful. So you end up throwing a whole bunch of it and seeing what sticks for listeners. But yeah, it's interesting because we've got quite a lot in common in a sense, Mike. The love of running and boxing, that was me before I did this podcast, and kind of in another life, I was training as a professional ultra runner. So that was my dream and kind of what I expected to do. So it's funny how your life twists and turns, right? And you mentioned that you used to be really overweight, which is something I didn't know about you. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that later, because I think that's actually one of those stories that is very inspiring for people when I'm looking at you now. I couldn't imagine you at 240, 250 pounds. So that's kind of crazy that you managed to get all that weight off. So I'm sure we'll get into all of these things, but I thought maybe we could start, Michael, by talking about, well, actually, I'm going to throw a question at you that you started your show, your interview with me, and that was, what's going on in the world, Mike? There's a lot of people that have got their heads in the sand, and you talk to a lot of people, myself included. We've got a mutual friend, Matt Smith. He's been on your show. And I think the most critical thinkers out there right now are talking about these things, these big changes, monetary changes, the collapse, really, let's call it what it is, the collapse of the American empire. It looks like it's in decline. Maybe that's just my words. I'd love to get your take on it. So I'll throw it back to you, Mike. How do you see the state of the world right now? Why are you discussing these topics? What is it that you're concerned about?
It's funny. I ask myself this question every day and I get like a different answer, kind of like the same two answers, but different answer depending on the time when I get asked this or when I think about it. It's like so much is going on right now, but nothing is happening all at the same time. But like as we sit here today, things seem to be really, really accelerating, right? Like internationally, you hear these same storylines. So I'm kind of at a point now where I'm like, all right, I believe it when I see it. Like, for example, Middle East, Iran. It's imminent. Israel is going to bomb Iran, right? But I've heard this movie. Like, this is a movie that I've seen over and over and over again, and it hasn't happened yet. People are talking about that, right? So that seems to be accelerating at the moment. And Netanyahu said yesterday, I think he said yesterday, like their plan is to take over all of Gaza. I don't know how you do that. I mean, I don't know how, like, those people are resilient. You're not going to just move them willingly. But so that seems to be picking up speed. Russia Ukraine doesn't seem to be slowing down, although Trump claims that he had a call with Putin and they made a lot of progress, but that doesn't seem to be stopping at all. You also have, I mean, yesterday the stock market got killed. You had gold go back up in price. Bitcoin went backwards for a little bit. It went down to like something like 73,000. But yesterday, I didn't look to see what it was today, but 109,000 is out right now.
I think so,
So it's
yeah.
like,
111,000, I think, today it hit.
oh, is that what it is? What's gold at today? Do you know?
Yeah, I think gold's right. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's right around $3,300.
Okay, because that's what it was yesterday. So it hasn't moved that much today.
No, in fact, I think it pulled back just a tiny bit today. But yeah, to your point, there's a lot happening in the world right now, and I think you're speaking to some of the confusion in it all. Like living through these times is quite jarring, right?
Yeah, it's just I don't know if you find this for yourself, but it's like you see, and maybe also too, we're very plugged into what's going on, right? Like we pay attention more than most people do. I mean, I have friends now that have gotten to a point, and I can't say that I blame them. Like they are in that blissfully unaware category, which whatever. I can't be like that. This is what I do. This is the stuff I'm interested in, and I think it's important as we move into this next phase, whatever that may look like, to be in tune with what's going on. So, yeah, I mean, you find yourself hard. Is it hard for you to talk to regular people anymore in your personal life?
I don't talk to a lot of regular people anymore. I'd say that 99% of my interactions are with people through the work I do because I kind of live out of the way and I'm not living in my home country. I mean, I speak to regular people, but I guess regular people that I know through what I do is the mainstay. And in terms of neighbors and people like that, well, we're speaking in a foreign language for a start. So there's no complex discussion going on with them because I'm in a second language. So that's kind of nice, Mike, that I don't have to have these political discussions. I see it as a blessing. And, it's funny you said blissfully unaware. There are people that are blissfully unaware, but I class myself as blissfully aware. I've tried to, I tried to stay informed, but I don't carry it heavily. But one thing that I have noticed is a lot of people out there are carrying this information really heavily. So I think that's the real pressure that you speak to is that all of these things are happening. There's so many different narratives. And I wonder how you deal with that, Mike. Like doing the job that you do as a podcaster, do you find this stuff heavy? Do you sometimes just need to, I mean, I certainly sometimes need to switch off and, go away for a few days and close the laptop. But it doesn't really get to me knowing this information or speaking about it. How about you?
What really gets to me, and it's been, I would say it's more amplified lately, is just how people, I think they've just taken things in America for granted. And in my everyday life, whether I'm going to yoga or walking over to the gym or even out on a run, I mean, I run out in the desert and I mean, I get on a rant about this. These electric bikes that we have out here, where you have people that are on these things in the desert. And I go back there to get away from the cars because people don't pay attention when they're driving anymore. Everybody's on their phones. And people will zip by on these electric bikes. They go up to 20 miles an hour. And it's like, okay, what's the point of being on this thing? Like, you're supposed to be back here because you want to run or you want to like bike or whatever, a real bike. And just the lack of consideration and the decay in our society. And again, maybe it's because we're paying attention to what's going on, but it does bother me. And I've even found myself friends that I've known for a long time and I'm drifting away from them because I use the term bubblegum. I don't live in the bubblegum baby doll world. Like I'm not concerned about the new car that I'm going to buy or where I'm going to have a fancy dinner or, that stuff to me doesn't matter in the grand scheme of where we're at. And friends will call me to like talk about stuff like that. And it's just like, I'm just not interested in any of this anymore.
Yeah, it's the surface level conversations that I really struggle with, especially if somebody is really oblivious, or I would say even worse, actually, Mike, is the propaganda, when somebody's just filled with the mainstream take, whether it's on the left or the right, I just find that really tedious because there's no true narrative that's coming from the mainstream on the left or the right. The both, I think we discussed this on your show when we had that interview. I said that for me is, stay as well away from the mainstream narratives as possible because it's essentially giving you a false view of reality. So yeah, I try and avoid that stuff. But I guess for you, Mike, as somebody that's speaking to all of these people, what are the key themes that you're picking up on right now that you do think matter? What are the main things that you're taking notice of? I mean, you speak to a wide range of people, right?
Yeah, you froze up for a second. Can you repeat what you said there?
Sure, Mike. I was just saying, besides agreeing with what you were saying about these narratives, and yeah, it's difficult during these times to speak to people about the kind of tedium of the day-to-day stuff. But also, I'm wondering what kind of conversations are you having right now that you'd think are most important? Like, where are the true narratives and what are you most kind of concerned about? Because you speak to a really good cross-section of people. You've got a wide range of guests that you bring on, right?
Yeah, I mean, my focus right now is the economic, the Bitcoin world, gold, how that's going to play into all these things, the Federal Reserve. And I can't sit here and say I'm an expert in any of it. My whole goal with bringing these people on is to learn, to make some type of decision, for like the best interest of me and my mother and my sister. And friends that listen, their curiosity, obviously share that with them as well. But they don't seem to be, like I said, going back to what I said a few minutes ago, they're not interested. Like yeah, maybe I'm just boring the way I deliver it on my show or something. Like people just aren't like they're just so blissfully unaware. I mean, yeah. So that's where all my focus is right now. I mean, yeah. I mean, I like Syria is that's interesting to me. Middle East is interesting to me, but like I don't care. Like somebody messaged me the other day about Epstein. Like I don't care. Can I swear? You don't want people swearing on your show, do you?
No, feel free to. It's I don't think it's going out on any platform that will get me banned. So yeah, feel free to speak as you speak.
Well, I don't want to be vulgar if if you don't want me to, but I won't be. I don't care. I don't give. I don't care about Epstein. Somebody just a couple days ago sent me something about that. I was like, I don't care about this. How long are we going to wait around for this file? And even if they put it out today, would you believe it? Would you believe that the information is accurate? That thing's probably been scrubbed over so many times. That manila folder is probably red now. It's been scrubbed so much to a different color.
Yeah,
So
I
why are
agree.
we focusing on this?
There's so many of those things right now, isn't there? Where it's just like constantly teasing the mainstream audience. We're going to give you this reveal, whether it's Epstein, JFK, QAnon. It's just a constant treadmill now of conspiracy, and I find that tedious because, again, like you, I believe it's all part of the bread and circuses that you get at the end of the empire. I don't think any of this is real. This idea that there's a team of heroes here to save us, to save the Republic, that's a ludicrous narrative for me. What about you, Mike? Did you have any high hopes when Trump came back into power, and have they been dispelled yet? Or are you still kind of on the fence?
No, I never did. And not to say, look, I didn't think he would get reelected. I thought that the mechanisms were in place in certain key states, one being Arizona where I live, that they would have cheated again to install her. Obviously, I was wrong, but I thought I had good reason of why I thought they would put her. I thought she would win, and now to me, it's more apparent. Well, I said this right shortly after he won, because all the tech bros were behind him, and I asked a question. I said, why were these people that did everything they could to make sure he didn't get reelected in 2020? Why were they behind him now? Why did the LA Times and the Washington Post stay silent during the election? They didn't endorse anybody. Why were they all at his inauguration? How come Elon Musk all of a sudden went from Trump supporter to full blown Trump supporter
Well,
and was
it
there with him
almost sounds like there's a
everywhere?
hand behind the curtain, Mike.
Right. We think like that, I know that, but I would say this to people, and they'd push back and be like, "Well, no, the people spoke. The people spoke this time." Now, I don't disagree with it. I don't disagree with that. I mean, the people got what they wanted. They wanted him. They also wanted him in 2020. And I believe that they cheated in 2020 to install Biden. So why didn't see this time. Never stopped him before. So I don't believe that these tech people had an epiphany or a moment of clarity like Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction, where the guy, remember the guy shot the gun and none of the bullets went through?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. In fact, it's funny you mentioned that. I just saw a Pulp Fiction meme about 2 hours ago, which was, yeah, Samuel L. Jackson. It's weird that you said that.
I love that movie, by the way. But I don't believe that they had that moment of clarity and they said, "Oh my God, we were wrong in 2020, and now let's support the good guys." And look where we're at, right? Look what these people are doing. Like, look at the instruments that they're putting in place. And our mutual friend Matt Smith, he went into detail about it. That published that when he wrote that article, and he came on my show back in February. I was like, this is it. Like, this is. I mean, he couldn't have said it any better, wrote about it any better. Substack, like, instead of going against MAGA, they just took it over.
Yeah, the things that are happening in the US right now in they don't happen in such a short space of time. I am of the opinion that the American deep state, if you want to call it that, is the one that controls both sides, and they use either side at the right moment. So the last presidency, Biden, it set up the Trump presidency. And if you look deeper at certain things that happen, you see that quite a lot. So, for example, Nord Stream got taken out under Biden, but that was a key part of the strategy for leveraging Europe and getting them to buy US LNG during the trade war that Trump just started. So now he's kind of got Europe over a barrel because it's like, you guys don't have your cheap gas. We're going to steal Germany's industry and we're going to sell you our LNG now at 5 times the cost. I actually see a synthesis, and I think it's very clever how America works as a nation. And the way I see it is all of this culture war and stuff, that's just there to get people to buy in again and again and again. But ultimately, yeah, I don't think what Trump's doing is something they just came up with. I think this has been planned for a long time. It's such a big thing that's going on, right, Mike, with the tariffs and the trade war and the decoupling from China. This is world shaking in a literal sense, but I don't think Trump came up with that. I think there's people way above him who, yeah, have been planning this for a long time.
Well, and also with that is, it's, to your point, the decoupling from China, but we're also, mirroring China, looking at them and saying, this is the blueprint, potentially. This is what we need to move towards, because the government is now, they're building, they're going to start building their own infrastructure, right? Their own plants to make these AI chips.
Do you think this is realistic, Mike, what they're talking about, in terms of this reindustrializing? I mean, when you look at the kind of figures and the sheer scale of what China's got in terms of manufacturing and infrastructure and ability to process and use commodities, do you think that actually has any realistic chance of success in the US?
It will take so long. I mean, how many years will it take to accomplish this? Because we have gotten to a point, how many decades has it taken to get to where we're at now? And, the United States realizes we're not militarily ready. We can't defend ourselves. We are reliant on China. We outsource everything. So I get what they're trying to do, but I met a guy that I know, his older guy, boomer, the boomers, man. The boomers think everything's going to turn around in 2 years. Not all boomers, before I get hate on it, but they're fun. It's funny when you talk to them because they're like watching Fox News. It's all going to be fine. 2 years, they'll build plants. Everybody will go to work and we'll be great. I said, this is going to take years to do this. Years. So, I mean, I think it sounds to me like the intention is good of what they're attempting to do. Now, does this work? I have no idea. I don't think anybody knows if it's going to work.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset that the intention is the propaganda, that actually underlying this, what we're actually seeing is the US recognize that it's going into a reset moment based on all of its debt and the fact that China has overtaken it so substantially in terms of manufacturing. Like you said, it's taken 50, 60 years, and America did that willingly. I don't believe they expect to bring that back. But what I do think they're going to do is to try and stop the rest of the world trading with China. So rather than bring it back, it's like, no, we're going to bring back the stuff that we definitely need to survive, the key parts of this. But actually what we're trying to do is just make sure everyone essentially isolates China, and you have to trade with us. We're going to force you through tariffs. So I see it a little bit more combative than most people, that this is just the US being the hegemon, the bully, and telling the world, listen, we're writing the terms in this reset. But actually what we're seeing also is the global debt markets have said, well, you can tell us what you want. We ain't buying your debt. So you're going to have to hyperinflate your currency to do whatever it is you want to do. And we just saw that this week, didn't we, Mike, with the sovereign bond market essentially blowing up. So I know like it's not necessarily the only thing you discuss, but you do discuss economics. So I'd love to get your take just on that in general, and also what you're seeing in the US. Like, are people coping with the inflation you've got over there? As far as I've been told, people are really struggling, and the tariffs are just going to, in my opinion, exacerbate that. So what's your take on how people are coping with all of this?
Yeah, I think people are. I think people are. It was funny. You know Matt Bracken?
No, but I listened to him on your show, so I really enjoyed the recent conversation you had. That's the first time I heard him speak.
So yeah, I'm going to bring this up because it's it's again, it's just a movie, but I can't. I think of it, based on the question you just asked me. Have you seen the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas?
Yeah, absolutely. Classic.
And I watched The Critical Drinker. He did a review on his YouTube channel. It's like my favorite movie critic. Like when he reviews it, most of the movies he reviews, I watch it. He did like a revisit of it. He put it out about a year ago. It's really good. But he was doing how that movie came out in 1993, and it's so relative today. I mean, obviously they didn't have the iPhones and technology back then, but it was about a guy who, got fired from his job, and he was sitting in LA traffic on a sweltering hot day and just snaps and gets out of his car, and he's trying to get back to the life that he had. And we look where we're at now, and the reviewer was like making points, and I'm like, oh my God, so true. Like the idea of owning a home today has become a pipe dream for people, right? I mean, people can't afford to buy a house. Food, I mean, I don't notice any prices really coming down at the grocery store. I mean, to go out to eat, I don't know how people go out to eat any longer. Like, what you're paying for. And this is another thing they talked about in the movie. There's a scene where it stars Michael Douglas, and he hits all these, like he goes through all these stopping points as he's making his way back to his ex-wife's house. And one of them is he's in a fast food restaurant and he's 2 minutes late to order breakfast, and they won't give him breakfast. And so eventually he changes his mind. He orders lunch and he gets his hamburger. Now the picture makes it look all beautiful, right? Like a beautiful burger. And he gets this thing and it's terrible. Looks like garbage. And this is where we're at now, where you're paying for very mediocre food and you're paying a premium. And then they want you to tip 20% on top of it. Like every company is just trying to grift as much as they can out of you, squeeze every last penny, and provide less service, or give you the bare minimum of a product. And I'm like, God, this is where we're at.
That film's so good, just showing you the pressures of the everyday person, and he gets out of his car and he goes through his day, and it's the small things that break him, they chip away at him. And by the end of that one day, he's literally gone full psycho mode. He's like rebelling against the entirety of the system and society. And I genuinely feel there's a lot of people that are Michael Douglas just before that point. Like the whole of society, I feel in the West, is actually Michael Douglas sat in his car just before that point where they have that mental break. And do you feel the same? Like, do you notice that people are becoming a little bit more unhinged?
Jaggedy, combative. I like the scene in that movie too. Remember when he gets he gets a hold of the guns, and then he goes into the surplus store, and the guy who's like a KKK guy, Nazi, and he thinks he's identified with him, which he doesn't. But then he gets a hold of a bazooka, a rocket launcher, and he's walking through the highway. Remember the city construction worker, take your budget, so you're spending more money, and that is, I mean, it's like, right? Remember he fires a rocket in and blows up part of the highway or whatever. But I mean, I don't think we have much of a middle class here in America any longer. And I think the middle class consists of somebody pointed this out to me. Government employees are the middle class. That's a problem. People that work retail jobs, they can't afford to live.
No,
You go through the college system. Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, Mike. I think there's a little bit of a lag, so listeners, apologies if it kind of looks like I'm interrupting. I'm pretty good at not interrupting, to be fair. So it's just a little bit of a lag. So sometimes I feel like you've finished your sentence. But I was just going to say the other big part of this, Michael, that a lot of people don't acknowledge is that most people who feel they're in the middle class, it's the paper worth. They've got a pension, a 401k, a house price, and a mortgage that they're paying off. That's all an illusion. You know, we've got a middle class. Maybe they've got their head above water now, but what happens when all of those assets collapse in value, which is what we speak about often? Now, all of a sudden, you've got people who thought they were wealthy realizing, no, our standards of living are going to collapse. And that's my big worry, that America's living in a fantasy, and many people, I would say, in Great Britain and Europe too. I don't know, if you go to London or somewhere like that, it looks like a post-collapse society already. But I think in America, you've still got this kind of vision of wealth, but that to me is where it's really going to fall apart is in the next 6 months to 12 months. I think it's going to look like the Great Depression personally.
Well, no, and I also think on top of that is, I agree with you on the paper side of it, but these people have debt and leverage themselves, because they need a nice car or two nice cars or, credit cards and what have you. I mean, we become a debt slave society. When people say, oh, they're going to build like a prison, digital prison. No, it's a digital slavery, and we're in it. They try to get you as young as, you get to college, student loan debt, student loan debt. College is like 30 grand a year now for a regular school. That is insane to me. So now you're going to get out of school, 100,000 in debt for, give or take, marketing, finance degree, where you're going to learn no real life skills. You're going to have to go get a job, a corporate job, because you're a slave. You have no choice. A lot of times with people, they'll end up financing a car. Now the interest rates are a lot higher today to do that, but they'll still do it because we're a debt slave society. And then now you're on the carousel and you never get off. So people might have pensions, 401ks or whatnot, but they keep, well, I don't know, they won't be able to do it anymore, refinance their homes, or they'll keep, financing cars, leveraging their future. It's crazy.
And this is where the film Falling Man, is it Falling Man or Falling Down?
Falling down.
Yeah, Falling Down comes in. And I would say to listeners, definitely, if you've not seen that film, check it out, because it's about, is it 20 years old now? 25 years old?
No, 1993. So it's over 30 years old.
Wow. Yeah. So watch that film. I think you'll probably be able to find it for free online. And just imagine the state of people when the illusion does pop, when the bubbles do burst, when the housing market does collapse and the stock market finally enters the big deflation in terms of asset prices, and people find out that their future that they've been banking on. Because one of the things, Mike, is most people live in the future. Like, they're enduring real hardship now. They're going to work. They hate the boss. They hate the job. They can barely afford to pay the bills. They can maybe go on holiday once a year, and the rest of the time they're in this state of hyper stress. And what they do is they project out forward. So if I keep doing this, then one day I'll retire. One day I'll live the life I want to live. If they find out that that future's gone and that those numbers that they were getting on a piece of paper or on the screen every year telling them that they was going to have a future is actually no longer going to provide for them, I think we will see a psychological break at the mean in society. And I don't want to be there when that happens. I don't want to be around those people, which is kind of partly why I've chosen to live my life as I do. But you're right there in the thick of it in Arizona. So I'm guessing you're thinking it's going to be happy days, Mike.
I mean, I'm in one of the worst spots you could be right now, and I've acknowledged that. Do you read comments when people write comments on like your channels or social media or any of that? Maybe I need to stop doing that.
I used to, but I stopped purely because I think for listeners, you probably won't know this unless you've got your own channel, but you start off, you get a nice core group, and then you start to get a few trolls, and then, the more people that watch it, the more high percentage that is. Even if it's only 5%, you imagine waking up and reading, 15 comments making fun of your content or just being rude. So I've got a rule. I just automatically block those people if I see them. But it's actually sadly got to the point where I don't go through my comments that much because of those reasons. It's just tiresome, and I don't have time to respond to people anyways. So I try to save myself for my actual community, the people who, support the content, and I respond to those guys.
Yeah, I've gotten to that point now. In the beginning, I was just first of all, I never thought anybody would listen to my show, so I was like, "Oh, people are listening! Wow!" Like,
Yeah.
I never took myself seriously. I mean, when I started this, a long time ago, I was, if I get 100 people that listen, that's great. I don't know. I guess it's better when you have no expectations for something, right? But now that you get, when things get a little bit bigger and bigger audience, and but anyway, somebody wrote a comment. They're like, "Well, it can't be that bad living in Arizona, or else you wouldn't be there anymore." I'm like, "Yeah, there's no water here. Like, I live in a place with millions of other people. There's no water." And I get it. When I made the decision 18 years ago, we're in a different time now. I know I have to leave. I know this would be a very, very bad place if any type of infrastructure, electricity, especially in the summer, if we had a power outage. But the other side of me, I mean, I've lived here for almost 19 years. This has become a home to me. So it's not easy, when you're, less attachment, but sometimes that's easier said than done. So I've stayed here a little bit longer than I planned, but yeah, my plan next year is to move back to the Midwest, to be back in Ohio, Northeast Ohio. I mean, my mother's there, and I like the idea of somewhere where it rains, like, where water comes down, like, because we don't get a lot of that here. And also, I mean, the winters can be somewhat brutal, but we have a homeless population here that I'm tired of it. I'm tired of seeing it. I see it every day out my window. They live right in the desert next to me. Bicycles with their little attachments, with whatever stuff is in it, and they ride their bikes right past my window. I'm so sick of seeing that.
Yeah, and homelessness often goes hand in hand with substance misuse problems, which goes hand in hand with a whole host of other problems. So it's not a case of like, oh, it's homeless people. It's a case of there's dangerous people around you.
Of course. I mean, these people, they don't want help. Okay, I'm sure there's somebody out that got help and is succeeding. I'm sure. But let's play the numbers game here. These people don't want help. They don't want to live in a shelter because there's rules in the shelter. They can't do drugs. They don't want that. They don't want rules. They can go panhandle at the grocery store right next to me, and I mean, they must make enough money. If people stopped giving their money away, they would go. They would be gone, but they don't. I don't want to live around that anymore. And it's not LA here. I mean, LA is the worst. Like, tents on the sidewalks. I haven't even been there in 5 years. It was bad. And I can't even imagine what it's like now. Seattle. When I was up in Seattle, you go downtown, you go into a parking garage, there's like communities in the parking garage of homeless. And the cities are not interested in solving it at all. It's
Do you
terrible.
think this
So
is
yeah,
do you
so
think this is going to get better, Mike? That there is a way out of this for America? Because if you look back, I guess over the last 50 years, it's just been a continuous decline, and it's almost like now we're speeding up. You said it's accelerating. I feel like the West, moreover, is accelerating towards something, and the places that maybe would have been fine in Europe, for example, we had some populations that were wealthy, that were harmonious. They're filled with migrants, and they've almost lit a ticking time bomb under those places. So it almost feels like there is a vested interest in seeing the West collapse. And some of these things are long term trends that were in play anyways, debt, of course, and the corruption of the political side of things. All of that exists, but it is like it's speeding up now. And yeah, I just think America, especially those big cities, they're going to be like a really hot summer's day. I think was it Shakespeare who said, I think it was Romeo and Juliet, and I think he said the warm weather is when the mad blood stirs. And the warm weather, in my opinion, is this crisis that we're talking about in terms of debt, joblessness, rampant inflation, and then, yeah, social crisis. All of those things just manifest and you get the poly crisis. I think that's what Matt Bracken spoke about on your show. He's kind of, I wouldn't say a doomsday guy, but he's at the far end of it. He thinks it's really going to fall apart, doesn't he?
yeah, and I don't even look at it as like a doomsday, even though that's part of one of the titles of his books. But I try to be objective and say this is where we are, and I don't think that these institutions can be salvaged. I mean, the moral decay that we see in our society, it's just I see it, man. It's like rot. It's just you could see the rot. Like no, people have no consideration. They have no moral compass for anything. I mean, if you meet somebody with a moral compass, I mean, hang on to that person because it's few and far between anymore. And everybody is like me, 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 me. It's about me. It's about me. It's about me. And people are just they're oblivious, man. I mean, it just yeah. I never thought I'd find myself like wanting to be away from cities and to live in a smaller area, but I yeah, in Phoenix, like I'm just so ready to leave all this, you know. Yeah. And I don't know how does it get better? I mean, I think you're gonna see more layoffs. You're gonna have more people out of work. What how does that and we haven't even talked about AI, right? How is that gonna impact things? Both on the bottom level and on the top level. I mean, and coming back to college here for a second, I'm jumping around. So if I'm all over the place, just stop me. But these kids go into these, they get these degrees, they're buried in debt, and you know, some of these white collar jobs, I don't think they're going to be of any consequence. I don't think you're going to find them in the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, there's so many jobs that AI will take over. The legal profession, for example, they're talking about having AI, just AI lawyers and AI judges eventually. There's so many things. I mean, even for me, there's so many things that I can do now more efficiently. Like I can do 10 other jobs because of AI if I want to, than just what I do. It speeds up everything, which is great. It does democratize certain things, but it also means that there's 10 jobs that I would have employed other people to do that I don't have to employ now. And, even for people like us at some point, I'm sure they're going to make sure that content like ours is impossible because AI will surveil things and it will change the algorithms. It's already happening. I'm sure you see that in your own content, how it gets kind of stuffed down to the bottom of a list. So, yeah, we're going through those profound changes. I mean, they call it the fourth industrial revolution. And I think we are going to end up with all of that smart city nonsense, but not for like 50 years. I think the first part is 30, 40 years of serious decline. I think that's what we're actually going to face is serious decline. And they're just going to leave us to the dogs, so to speak, because they're not going to be able to police that. So they're just going to fill us with propaganda through the screens, get us to turn inwards on each other. And once we're exhausted, they'll just come in and pick up the pieces at the end of it and say, right, okay, now here's your digital ID, here's your digital currency, and here's how we're going to treat you. And you'll have to accept it because we're not going to voluntarily go into that future. So they need to allow the old system and structures to collapse. And that's the bit I think we're at. Do you have any different view on that, Mike? I mean, I feel like we've kind of just gone straight into talking about collapse. We could have talked about running, Mike, or boxing, but we chose the collapse. But yeah, I'll hand it back to you.
Whatever you want, man. No, see, I feel like, it's interesting. So you think we're 30, 40 years away from the whole smart city concept? Did
Yeah,
I understand that right?
yeah, I think there's no way. I mean, if you think about just the infrastructure and I'd say the upgrading of everything they need to do, I think what we're actually going to get is something where they just have a really crappy version with your phone, digital ID, digital currency, but the rest of society is going to look like, yeah, like Escape from Los Angeles. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be drugs and tires burning in the street. And yeah, it's not going to look futuristic. These visions of the future. No, no, no. That's good. Maybe in 20, 30 years, we'll have that.
Like the original Mad Max. That was probably the most accurate of all of them because they didn't have any money, right? Like the restaurants were still open, but yet the bikers were like controlling the routes, right? The towns. But yeah, I feel like they keep building around me these mega apartments, condos. I don't know how they're collecting the rent for all this. The asking rent prices for it, but I'm seeing more of this pop up, and even like in Northeast Ohio, where I'm from, I'll be back there in a couple of weeks so I'll see if more of these projects have come up. But these 15-minute cities, to me, I feel like that's what they are because they're high-end apartments where you've got retail shopping within proximity, and they all have the same type of storefronts, like these retail shopping centers. Panera Bread, friggin' nail place. Now it's pickleball. Pickleball, like that's the phenomenon. I don't know if it is where you are, but it's the same type of stores in all of these plazas. So and the CBDC, I think it's already, I think it's already here in regards to, the foundation of it, because you do everything on your phone, right? They've implemented softly the real ID to fly here in the United States. Now you don't need it. You can still use your passport. It's only a matter of time before you will need a real ID to be able to get on an airplane. You will need a real ID to be able to drive a car here in the United States. Be a couple of years, but it's coming. And this is where, I people will push back and they're like they say to me, well, you're not fighting, you're not fighting. You cannot fight technology right now. It's going to continue to evolve and they're going to continue to just, put the screws into you. So, I was in yoga, find this funny. And the studio I go to, they just started a YouTube channel, right? And this woman yells out after class, had to be that person. She's like, I'm not creating a YouTube account because they're going to track me and I'm not getting a real ID. It's like, dumb. Do you have a credit card? Right. Do you have a credit card? Do you use it? Yeah. Okay. You don't think they can track you based upon that? They don't care about you. But if you don't think there's a record of that, even if you're one of those people that says, oh, I'm going to pay with cash only. I had a boomer put a comment on my Rumble channel. Well, I pay with cash and credit card. Okay. Well, you walk into a branch to get money, right? That's all on camera. There's a record of you doing a cash withdrawal and they don't care about you. And in 10 years, you'll be dead and you'll have the younger generation that uses their phone for everything. They rub their hand in front of the scanners at the store.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and what you said that, I think that's actually a really good vision of how it is going to work. They are building these new apartments and complexes and they look pristine and people will flock to them because of what I vision the cities will look like. All of that, when you've got boarded up shop fronts and you've got lootings. Look at these videos in the US where you get 50, 100 inner city youths from these poor black ghettos flooding into a mall and just stripping it like locusts and, filming it and cheering it on, like that kind of stuff. That's all going to get worse. The shops will close down. And then people will actually go to those places, like what you said, where they've got these nice, pristine apartment blocks. They've got everything you need on the bottom level. I actually saw one of these in this country. Me and my wife was driving across country and I said, listen, shall we stop and grab a coffee? And she said, yeah, let's stop. So we pulled into the nearest city and the sat-nav took us to a coffee shop that was at the bottom of this big apartment complex. It was all new. There was like a nice playground for the kids. There was green trees. The coffee shop was really nice and it had lots of young people with funny colored hair. And I thought, okay, this looks pretty relaxing. There was a nice sandwich shop. And then I looked around at the courtyard and it was kind of almost like a gated community. And I thought, well, this looks safe. And I don't like apartments, but if I had to live in one, this is probably the kind of place that I'd choose if I had to live in a city apartment. And then I just looked at my wife and I said, oh shit, we're in a 15-minute city. She looked around and sure enough, there was a bank, there was a pharmacist, there was the coffee shop, there was the gym, and there was the nice new apartments, and that was the 15-minute city. And that is what people will flock to, I think, Mike. They'll see everything else that's happening and they'll say, like, we need to get our family to there because we can afford to. And that's how you get people to do it. And they'll slowly transition people into those places who can afford it. And everyone else, they'll be in the ghettos with UBI and all the other stuff. So that's how I think it's going to kind of turn out. You talk about the middle class, there'll still be enough people, I guess, who have to work in the new economy. That's going to be a longer transition. And those people will choose those places to raise families. No one's going to want to live in these, right in the city where you've got boarded up shops and drug addicts all over the street. You're saying it yourself, aren't you? Like, you don't want to live near all the homeless people. You're trying to get out of there.
Yeah, and even where I live, it's nowhere near as bad as like in the central part of the valley or downtown. But you can just see it getting worse and worse and worse. But like they just built a new, I think it's a 15-minute city, right? Paradise Valley, which is a really, really nice area. They tore up the mall because the whole mall that like I grew up going to, that concept is basically dead. And they put a brand new Whole Foods in it. There's a Costco, there's a gym, bunch of little restaurants right in the same parking lot. And people they'll grab it because they're like, oh, this is great. I can walk here. I can walk there. Look where I live is nice. I walk to the gym. I walk out the door and go for a run in the desert. I have a Whole Foods that I can walk to, a movie theater, everything. And it is fantastic. And people will literally, they'll sign up for it, not knowing any better. I wouldn't have thought of it either if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, like to put two and two together. But I even think though, don't you think even for lower income people, they'll have 15-minute cities that'll be like coach on an airplane, won't be first class. You'll have
Eventually.
these shit stores, these dollar stores or whatever, and
Yeah, eventually. I mean, you'll get a UBI and eventually, because there'll be so much homelessness. And I guess the whole plan is to take away your independence and to make you dependent on their new system. And then eventually they'll start to control people using that. But I guess my thinking on all of this is that you have to have the collapse that's first. You can't just say, okay, everyone line up, we're going to give you UBI, move into this apartment, because the old world has to be done away with somehow. And, you mentioned, like, for example, the CBDC. I think in America, it's already there. It's Bitcoin. It's it's the private sector doing it. Bitcoin, stable coins, the blockchain. They wasn't going to get you to take a CBDC, but you've got Bitcoin and President Trump pushing it and stable coins attached to it now. So it's kind of like part of the US debt system. So they don't, the clever Mike, they've got Hegelian dialectics for everything. And at some point, people will find themselves with two choices. Both roads take them to the same place. And I think that's what we're going to see. But I think that's a great place to end for part one, Mike, because I think, it's a good kind of cutoff point. Do you want to tell people where they can find you and support your work, Mike? And I'll put the links in the description.
Yeah, so I'm on X at Coffee and a Mike and a MIKE. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I have a Substack. So I give all my people that want early access to all my shows. I encourage them to become a paid subscriber, and then I put it out 24 hours later publicly. Also, I have a YouTube channel, Coffee and a Mike, and Rumble. So
awesome! Cheers for that, Mike. It was a great part one, and I'm looking forward to part two. So let's get to it.
What you are basically. Deep, deep down, far, far in, is simply the fabric and structure of existence itself.
Peace for all men and women, for all men and women, for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, peace in all time.
Honestly expressing yourself.
Peace for all men and women, for all men and women, for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, peace in all time.
The fabric and structure of existence itself.
Within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you the people have the power.
Peace for all men and women, for all men and women, for all men and women.
The fabric and structure of existence itself.
Honestly expressing yourself.
Peace for all men and women, for all men and women, for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, peace in all time.